The red, low-balance light blinked on the inside of Noma's mask, flooding her visor with a soft cherry hue. She tapped the glass once to acknowledge it, bought herself 60 bonus seconds by overriding the warning, and kept walking. Around her, the alleys of Sector C-15 smelled of oil, mildew, and jealousy. Jealousy for every breath that came easily to someone else. People hunched against brick walls, clutching metal canisters the way ancestors once clutched purses. One old man sat on a plastic crate with his mask lifted just enough for his cracked lips to brush the street side vent, trying to skim unmetered air from the sewer grills. It was suicide. One cough of methane and he'd collapse. But desperation always bred unwise hope. Noma slid her hands into her coat pockets and reminded herself not to watch him too long. Pity was precious oxygen, wasted on moisture for tear ducts. Instead, she counted the cameras. 4 on the overhead cables, 2 embedded in the street lamps, 1 perched like a hungry bat from the corner of a drainage pipe. She mapped their blind spots from memory. Security had updated nothing since April, and that told her the city thought Sector C's citizens too broke to afford rebellion. Good. Complacency made for weak locks. Noma cut down a corridor between shuttered storefronts. At its end, awaited the only door that didn't groan. She had lubricated the hinges yesterday. Inside, the abandoned textile mill lay gutted, machines gone, electrical wiring stripped by scavengers, but the foundations still braced the earth. On a freestanding spool once used for yarn, she spread her equipment, a cracked slate displaying the network's pulse, a soldering pen, rolls of filament, and a single stolen flow meter. A knock, a double tap, a pause, a triple echo from the mill's side entrance. Noma didn't flinch. Rhythm mattered more than stealth. She tapped back and Hux let himself in. His cheeks were sunken, but his mask gleamed with fresh polish. When he spoke, the words hissed through the grill like tired steam. Council jacked the base rate another 5 units overnight. We're paying 3% more for the same lungful. That's the 3rd hike this quarter, Noma said without looking up. More like the 5th, if you count the punitive fees. Hux raked a hand through his brittle hair. People are passing out on the tram. They need what you promised. They'll get it tonight. She lifted the stolen meter, turning it so the dim light skated across its coppery surface. The thing resembled a thick bangle, small, innocuous, the diameter of a wrist. Only once it was clipped to a hose did the high-pressure valves inside reveal their tyrannical bite. I jam their accounting threads, we breathe for free. I lace the jam with a tracer, we find everyone else's stolen breaths and redirect the flow. Hux's eyes widened. Arbitrage in the opposite direction. Redistribution, she corrected, though she took pleasure in the finance term. Elites loved numbers, algorithms, elegant theft. Every line of code she wrote against them felt like throwing math back in their faces, but with interest. He placed a palm against his chest. What about risk? They caught Vina last month just for siphoning 2 minutes. Noma's jaw tightened. She remembered the footage. Guards lifting Vina by her armpits, her mask sealed off so efficiently it doubled as gag. The calm in Vina's eyes echoed still. Her hack was messy, mine symmetrical. Says every forger before prison. Not this one, Noma said. I have the master key. Hux let out a low whistle. Rumor was true? Someone pulled root access? Root access pulled me, she murmured, unsure whether to smile. 3 weeks earlier, a dossier had arrived via dead drop, citywide encryption keys, schematics of every distribution node, and the location of a ghost server codenamed Oasis. The sender's name had been simply Seller. She didn't know if Seller was 1 person or 20. Didn't matter. All revolutions required a spark and an accelerant. She could be both. She lowered a magnifier over her left eye and started rewiring the meter's telemetry chip. Its ID would proclaim it a legitimate, fully paid corporate unit while the internal valves provided unrestricted airflow. Around them, Sector C's shadows curled like witnesses. When I'm done, she said, you'll run courier. Slip these to the slum wards we marked. 1 family per unit. Date stamps staggered so the system doesn't see a pattern. By the time they suspect, thousands will already breathe debt-free. And when they do suspect, then we launch Phase 2. Phases sounded militant. Noma had once been gentle, a junior programmer in a compliance office, writing audit scripts so regulators could confirm that every citizen was correctly charged for living. It had taken 9 months in that cubicle to understand that she was building the invisible chain around her own throat. She had quit. The resignation letter was short. Her first act of sabotage was longer. Now she soldered rebellion as nimbly as she'd once soldered circuit boards. Sparks stuttered, catching in the cavities of the old mill and flickers of bronze. By dusk, 9 hacked meters lay in a neat row against the spool, each twin, tagged with counterfeit certificates. She handed them to Hux in a cloth satchel. Deliver, then lay low. You'll know if Phase 2 succeeds because you'll hear shouting from uptown. He frowned. Why do elites shout? They own the lungs of the world. They'll shout, Noma said, when someone snatches their wallets mid-inhale. Hux departed, disappearing into violet twilight with the satchel against his ribcage. Noma cleaned her workspace, wiped prints, and donned a fresh coat whose lining concealed a slimline data spike. Night air licked at her mask's intake. The icon in her visor glowed red, balance 0. But the valves still fed oxygen, stolen, invisible, intangible. She exhaled, silver fog swirling briefly before internal filters reclaimed every micron it could. Phase 2 meant the exchange. It perched at the city's heart like a gilded spider, a domed hall whose skylight was rumored to be made of polymerized diamond. Crowds of brokers in tailored respirators strutted across terrazzo floors, trading kilobreaths, megabreaths, futures, and derivatives. Oxygen had replaced gold a decade ago, when atmospheric collapse hadn't quite ended life but had made it brutally expensive. Now, the exchange minted scarcity into luxury, and the luxury minted more scarcity. Noma reached the perimeter fence just before midnight. Security drones roamed the grounds in lazy figure eights, their sensors tuned to temperature anomalies and unscheduled carbon signatures. She crouched behind a truck stamped with the exchange's crest and waited until 2 drones crossed trajectories. A programmed blind spot overlapped only 3 seconds. She darted to the maintenance hatch, jacked the data spike into the junction box, and slid inside the ductwork. Every breath inside the vent felt too loud. She could almost hear her alveoli creak. The duct terminated above the exchange's east gallery, overlooking servers stacked like monoliths along glass walls. Giant hollow boards crowned them, rippling with price graphs that soared or plunged on whims of speculation. Brokers toasted champagne while decimals rose. Noma's knees trembled, not with fear, but with the dilemma of justice. She had dreamed of smashing this place with crowbars, of leaking chlorine into its vents so the 1% would taste the scarcity they bottled for profit. But revolution must breathe, not poison. She would simply unshackle the commodity they chained. She popped the vent grid. Nobody noticed. The music was too loud. She dropped onto a walkway, stole behind the server racks, and slipped the data spike into the master port. Her visor scrolled authorization strings delivered by seller. Green checkmarks cascaded. Root access granted. Jack mode enabled. She executed script Robin Long v3. The algorithm did 4 things simultaneously. 1. Reassigned every flow meter flagged as critical balance to prepaid premium. 2. Looped the slum ward's user IDs so each transaction reflected an anonymous corporate account. Slate white laundering. 3. Siphon 0.1% of each elite portfolio, barely detectable but enough to fill the poorest lungs for decades. 4. Encrypted all logs, then broadcast them to mirrored nodes across 3 continents. Even if servers were wiped, copies would survive. Lines of code spiraled. The exchange's hollow boards juddered. Green turned to amber, ambers to red. Brokers paused mid-toast. Noma watched values nosedive for commodities labeled OY Spot, OY Holdings, Airfloor Futures. Panic migrated across faces quicker than any virus. Lungs behind diamond, studded masks contracted with dread. One man's meter beeped a 10-second warning. Inconceivable in these halls. He slapped it like it were jammed. It was. Security sirens erupted. Guards in charcoal haz suits fanned out, scanning for intruders with thermal scopes. Noma yanked her spike free. The script would run autonomously now, the network infected, replication unstoppable. She sprinted to the stairwell, but a guard rounded the landing. Red laser sight sliced the shadows. "Halt!" She ducked, rolled behind a marble pillar. The guard fired a taser bolt. It sheared stone, spraying dust. Concrete particles flared like embers in torchlight. Position compromised. She climbed a decorative vine trellis to the mezzanine, smashed a stained glass pane with her elbow, and clambered onto the exterior ledge. 2 stories below, a reflecting pool glimmered black. Noma had never been a swimmer. Garnet streetlights painted the water into glass. She inhaled, muttering, "Fervina." Then she leapt. Impact. Cold swallowed her. Shock lanced her chest, but the mask's valves sluiced precious air. She kicked upward, broke the surface, and swam for a drainage grate. Sirens diffused through water like distant wails. When she crawled onto the canal bank, her limbs shook, but her lungs sang. Up in the exchange, how many elites clutched their necks as the flow meters throttled? How many now tasted the fear of suffocation? She wished she could see their eyes, but instead she squared her shoulders and slipped into the labyrinth of warehouses along the river. Here no drone ventured. The humidity confused their sensors. Her slate buzzed. Incoming broadcast. She tapped it. Phase 2 success. Node replication at 47%. Standby for global push. Seller, she typed. Who are you? The reply arrived before she finished the last character. Someone stacking bricks so you can breathe. Noma chuckled, the sound hollow but alive. She typed. Next step? Ensure distribution. They'll cut pipes to contain damage. Need field ops at every junction. She thought of Hux, of the old man sucking sewer vapor, of children in Sector D whose games had devolved to timing who could hold breath the longest. Copy. She whispered to no one and pocketed the slate. The cat scrambled across garbage bins, startled. Its ribcage looked gaunt even beneath fur. She crouched and offered her gloved hand. The animal hissed, but curiosity beat fear. It inched closer. Noma unscrewed her mask's external scrub filter, normally used to store reclaimed moisture, and tipped 2 drops onto the pavement. The cat lapped them with fervor. Hydration. Not oxygen, but still salvation of sorts. Just then, sirens in the distance dipped from alarm to emergency broadcast tones. Loudspeakers crackled across the skyline. Citywide advisory. A systems error has disrupted oxygen distribution. Citizens are instructed to remain calm and report to the nearest relief station for manual reallocation. Non-compliance will incur penalty. Noma laughed. They want people to line up for rationed air? Good luck. Anxiety made cattle, desperation made wolves. The city would soon meet its own pack. She padded toward the tenement blocks, following the pulse in her mask that told her airflow remained constant despite her zero balance. Free breaths felt lighter, as though oxygen laced itself with helium once debt was removed. When she arrived at Block 47, the courtyard teemed. Mothers cradled infants. Elderly men stood with spines straighter than any columnist had ever depicted them. Their masks emitted a steady blue glow. Prepaid premium. Hux spotted her first, weaving through families like a courier of miracles. They're breathing, he said, both report and revelation. The meters danced green 5 minutes ago and never stopped. Noma surveyed their faces, shock, skepticism melting into cautious joy. One toddler tugged at his mother's sleeve as if for permission to laugh. Something inside Noma rippled, maybe pride, maybe terror. We need to move. They'll send tanks. They already did, Hux said. Listen. Engines growled from the avenue. Armored carriers emblazoned with the council's copper insignia advanced, headlights slicing fog. Loudspeakers repeated directives to surrender unauthorized devices, but as the carriers rolled nearer, blocks upon blocks of slum dwellers stepped forward, masks glowing azure like an army of will-to-wisps. Each carried a hacked meter. Noma's meters they'd reproduce faster than she'd planned. Neighbors swapping, copying, altering the firmware in real time. Collective genius bloomed when survival demanded it. The carriers braked. Soldiers emerged, visors mirrored, rifles slung. The squad leader hailed, "Remove illegal equipment or face depultory protocols." No one moved. Silence stretched until Noma felt it pulsing inside her veins louder than her heartbeat. Then a sound reached them from uptown. The hiss of failing regulators. The ragged gasp of affluent lungs. News travels on pressure gradients. Within seconds, rumors ricocheted through crowds. Uptown was suffocating. Councilors begged for emergency imports. The oxygen market had crashed to negative rates. The speculation bubble burst and inverted, meaning brokers now paid clients to take supply, except the supply rerouted through scripts. Through Noma's network of rebel meters, the squad leader repeated the threat. An old woman stepped forward, tugged free her respirator, and inhaled the warm night unfiltered. Gasps rippled. She exhaled slow, like praying. Her lungs did not seize. The city's smog had diminished after curfews reduced traffic. Ironically, the council's own conservation edicts made open air passable. She smiled, wrinkles folding like origami. Other citizens unlatched their masks. For a moment fear stuttered, then they too realized the air, though thin, was survivable without paying. Terror pivoted to wonder. They cast off meter masks that had bridled them since childhood. Helmeted soldiers hesitated. Their protocols involved subduing masked hostiles, not unmasked civilians radiating euphoria. Uncertainty swelled, tangible as humidity. One soldier removed his glove to wipe sweat, saw the tremor in his hand, and perhaps tasted his own dependence on the system. He cracked his mask seal for half a second. He breathed. He didn't die. Something crumbled behind his eyes. He turned, climbed back into the carrier, and drove away. The others followed. Engines receded like nightmares dissolving at dawn. Hux released a breath laced with laughter and tears. "You made the air free?" Noma shook her head. "We reminded them it was never theirs to sell." From her pocket the slate pinged, pipes severed at Central Reservoir. "They're trying to starve entire grid. Seller." Noma's triumph fluttered, threatened to stall. She typed, "How long?" 8 hours till reserves dry. Then masks or no masks, everyone chokes. The council's cruelty was exhaustive. If they could not monetize breaths, they would withhold them. She looked at the throng. So many dreams newly oxygenated. So many would extinguish by morning. She clenched fists. Huck saw her expression. "Tell me." "They'll drain the reservoirs. Can we stop it?" A plan shaped itself like crystals in supersaturated water. She recalled blueprints of aqueducts branching beneath the old subway, connecting to upstream filtration towers that predated privatization. Valves would be manual, rusted, but intact. "Yes," she said, "we open the ancients, flood the city with unmeadow flow." Hux grinned, feral. "Manual labor over software. Poetic. We'll need hands." He gestured to the crowd. "We have lungs, finally." Volunteers stepped forward. Some still wore masks as talismans. Others wolfed raw air, intoxicated. Noma briefed them quickly, drawing maps in dust. Teams formed. Torches scavenged from maintenance closets illuminated purpose. Before they dispersed, Noma caught the old woman's gaze. "You sure you're fit to wade tunnels?" The woman chuckled, displaying gaps where teeth had surrendered to decades of acidic smog. "Child, I was midwife to half this quarter. I've held more slippery miracles than you have fingers. Lead the way." They descended into the subway, boots splashing overspill. Concrete columns dripped with dew condensed from centuries of breath. Echoes multiplied into choruses. Reaching Val Station Delta took an hour. There the wheels stood, flaking red paint, bigger than a carousel axis. Noma positioned 2 volunteers on each spoke. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They heaved. Metal groaned, resisting like fate. Hands slipped, skin tore. Again. Again. The wheel creaked half a degree, then another. Suddenly a rumble like subterranean thunder answered as water and air convulsed through pipes long dormant. A breeze surged up the tunnel, cool and mineral-rich, raising goose flesh. Noma's visor flashed an alert she'd never seen. External pressure exceeds regulation. She removed the mask, tasted the air earthy, crisp. For the first time in years, breathing felt vitaminic. Voices hollered triumph upstream and downstream. Valves elsewhere had opened. The ancient network of civic generosity, buried by privatizers, awoke. Surface side, hydrants burst. Fountains, previously ornamental, erupted. The skyline exhaled plumes from grates, oxygen so abundant it fogged streetlights like angels shedding breath. Council newsfeed stuttered. Disinformation collapsed under video of children cartwheeling unmasked through geysers of pristine air. Uptown, penthouse dwellers smashed windows to inhale the wind sluicing downhill. Some cried, some laughed, some fainted from the vertigo of unpaid respiration. Noma climbed onto the platform, drenched, bleeding, lighter than helium. Her slate vibrated. "You did it, Seller." She typed, "We did. We ready. They'll pivot, try to price something else. Water, sun, time." Noma looked at her companions, at their raw palms, scuffed boots, blazing smiles. "Then we pivot faster." She pocketed the slate and breathed deeply, like it was the first luxury that asked nothing in return but wonder.